dark of the night, whispers of deceit.
Shadows dance on the walls.
Secrets they repeat, a shadowed figure
With eyes full of light.
hiding truths in the shadows where no one dares to pry. Uncover the truth, let the lies come undone. Peel back the layers until the light is shown. Uncover the truth, let the shadows run. Break free from the chains and find the sun. Uncover the truth in the dead of the night, where secrets lie hidden like a whispered bite. Uncover the truth in the dim of the light, where betrayals take root in the heart of the fight. In the rain-soaked streets, under the moon's pale light, a crime unfolds with a twisted, sinister mind.
All right. Oh, we got sound effects now. We're moving up in the world. This is Bloodlines and Betrayal. I am your host, the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully. And I'm going to be hearing this all day. Coach Schumann, who is exploring the world at the moment. Exploring the world, yes. And on Bloodlines and Betrayal, Coach Schumann had a great case that I had completely forgotten about, and that is the tragic murder of Sean Taylor. He was with the Washington Redskins, a first-round draft pick that I actually played against. When he was at the U in 2002. We played against him, and he was part of that famous draft class in 2004 where the U had 6 players drafted in the first round. And
what was the score of that game when you guys played them?
It was 42-7, I believe. I believe we scored. The two things that I remember from that game that Coach Edsel touted, we were the only team to block a punt on them that year, and we also had the longest kickoff return because we had a lot of them. So one of our we had the longest kickoff return they had given up all year long. So that was big, but we Coach Edsel was happy because we beat him in the second half. That was his, we beat their backups because I believe that they did not score in the second half. Larry Coker was the head coach, and we scored, so he was happy we beat their backups. You take the wins when you can get them. So Sean Taylor was the 5th overall selection, which was unusual. I mean, it would not happen now because he was a safety. Safeties don't get drafted that high, but he was picked 5th overall. He was a freak as an athlete. He was a freight train as a player, and he was having an incredible career. I remember at the time, I believe Joe Gibbs was the head coach. He had come back, and Mark Brunell was the quarterback, and they made the playoffs one of those years. But unfortunately, his life was cut short in 2007, and it just, the story is it's crazy because it's still happening today. What's been going on? There's been a rash of burglaries of professional athletes because obviously people know their schedules, they know when they're away, and a lot of them have beefed up their security systems, but plenty of sophisticated burglary rings have had success, breaking in the safes, getting into their house, stealing valuables, cash, jewelry. And this was one of the first ones, but it ended in a murder because he was not supposed to be home, and the burglars did not know that. This was in Miami-Dade, and there were several people involved. It was Venja K. Hunt, 20 years old, Eric Rivera Jr., he was 17, Jason Scott Mitchell, 17, Charles Kendrick Lee Wardlow, wow, that's a long name, 18. They had been charged for the murder and the burglary. They were arrested shortly after, about 100 miles from Miami. The suspects, they were not expecting Taylor to be home. They were not looking allegedly to go in there and kill anyone. But the kid, they were teenagers, and immediately one of them confessed. They got a confession. They had staked out the residence. They did some recon work, but it was a big, I guess, undertaking for them. I mean, there were young kids. They were doing something stupid. They expected to be in and out. And unfortunately, Taylor was home because he was injured. So the burglars were never expecting anyone to be at the house. And what's even more disturbing about it is he was shot in the leg. It ended up being the femoral artery, which is the main artery that if you get shot there, you're done. It causes extensive blood loss. So Taylor was home. He heard noises in his house, and he was walking around investigating what the hell was going on, and he was shot in the leg by one of the intruders. Now, the other thing that's troubling, Sean Taylor's fiance, Jackie Garcia, and his 18-month-old daughter, Jackie Jr., I guess, they were unharmed in the incident. The burglars fled the scene. I don't believe they ended up getting anything. They were shocked that everyone was there and took off. Taylor was rushed to the hospital. And initially, he was responsive, and they thought that he had a chance of surviving. And unfortunately, it did not happen. He was rushed to the hospital, and I believe he died. Yeah, he died that next morning at 3:30 a.m. He underwent 7 hours of surgery. And, the autopsy showed that it was the shot to the leg that severed the femoral artery that killed him. And
that's one of the biggest arteries in the body, right?
Other than your jugular, yeah, your femoral is the main one. If your femoral gets cut, severed, whatever, you're done. That was a problem. They shot him like in the perfect spot. And it was even Daniel Snyder, the owner of the Redskins at the time, who is not one of the warmest, fuzziest, most nicest people. He was very distraught during his news conference. And he stated, over the last 2 years, I got to really see him grow as a man off the field. And, he said off the field, he became very, very important to me, our organization, and Coach Gibbs. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible tragedy, and we're going to miss him very much. The Miami-Dade police found Taylor bleeding from the wound to his upper leg at his home. after responding to an emergency call placed by his fiance. Taylor had been awakened, like I said, by a noise in the living room, and he was shot in the entrance to his bedroom. And then he was airlifted to the hospital's trauma unit. They didn't initially provide news about the suspects, but I believe there was initially a connection because Taylor had a dispute with several Miami men over his all-terrain vehicles in 2005.
What was it? Altering vehicles?
His all-terrain, he had like an RV, like the four-wheelers, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It led to criminal charges against Taylor, and he received probation after entering a guilty plea, but then he was sued by one of the men. So they thought that it could possibly have been connected to that, and they investigated and interviewed many witnesses. They had evidence, a computer hard drive. They had, I think, some pictures from surveillance from other stores in the area,
right?
That were by the road, and they were waiting for answers from investigators. It's a miracle that the fiance and the daughter were not harmed by the intruders. And again, the whole thing, Taylor, he heard the noise. He had a machete that he kept in his bedroom. And he grabbed his machete, and Garcia grabbed the baby from the crib, and, she hid, and Taylor obviously went to check out the noise. I mean, he knew an intruder was there. And then, in the darkness, the intruder kicked in the bedroom door and then started firing. And he did have his machete, but he didn't have, obviously, a weapon. So that was crazy. And everyone said he was not a bad guy who has enemies. He was really more of an isolated person who kind of stayed to himself. And Sean Taylor's father was, concerned that his house was going to be burglarized because of break-ins, I guess, in the area. The police report said an intruder pried open a window and gained entry, and then was rifling through drawers to try to find anything of value for the burglary. And, obviously nothing happened. He pretty much died because of the blood loss that he suffered from the femoral artery. Because they said he was responsive because doctors had requested him to do certain things, squeeze their hands, move his feet or whatever. And so there were 100 family and friends that showed up, and he had some facial movements, and they thought that, he didn't suffer brain damage from the blood loss, and people were expecting him to make a recovery. But unfortunately, he never regained consciousness. And the doctors told him that something happened and Sean had gotten weaker. And the next update his father said was that, his son had regressed. And then it was a little while later where the doctors said that we lost him. And, they didn't give any explanation. They said it was just a minute-by-minute process. He was in for hours of surgery They were upfront from the beginning, but they said that it was a miracle that he was even alive when he got there. But they did tell him that it was going to be touch and go. So what basically happened was the 4 people arrested in conjunction, they were all minors or teenagers. And they panicked and fled 100 miles away from Miami. And once they were detained and arrested, they immediately, I think one of them confessed. So they said that, like, we didn't think he was going to be home. And the one that confessed was not obviously the one that shot him, but he told him who was the one who did end up shooting him. And it again, they were firing into the bedroom. So it's a miracle that his fiance and baby did not get shot. And the police got there fast. They got him airlifted out. And unfortunately, there was just so much damage done with the femoral artery that it could not be repaired. And the blood loss was too great for him to survive. As I mentioned, the guys who were initially charged in May 2008, a 5th suspect, 16-year-old Timothy Brown, was also charged with first-degree murder and burglary. And the death penalty was not sought because of the ages, and the shooter was 17 at the time. Jason Mitchell was the alleged mastermind of the burglary plan. Mitchell was found guilty of first-degree murder and armed burglary and given a life sentence. Now, the other issue that happened was the trial ended up being delayed because it was, I believe it was one of the, it was Eric Rivera. So Eric Rivera, one of the assailants, he kept hiring and firing lawyers. So this incident happened in November of 2007. Rivera did not go to trial, I believe, until 2013. It was 2014, actually. I'm sorry, 2013. He went to trial in 2013. But, I mean, again, it just kept getting postponed and postponed and postponed. So it was several of them. The Vinay Hunt, one of the suspects, he took a plea deal. He was sentenced to 29 years in prison with the possibility of parole. And then I believe they kept trying to delay it because the defense attorneys claimed there were hundreds of potential witnesses that needed to be interviewed before court could proceed. The trial was delayed again in 2009 for unspecified reasons. They kept postponing and postponing. Rivera was the one who caused the major delays because he, I believe, was the shooter. And he tried to, again, circumvent the system and keep firing and hiring lawyers until the judge basically had enough and said, this is your lawyer, you're going to trial whether you like it or not. And Rivera actually testified at his trial, which is something you should never do. And he tried to place blame on one of the other assailants, and the jury wasn't buying it. A jury found Rivera guilty of second-degree murder, armed burglary, and I believe he was sentenced to 57 and a half years in prison. Then Jason Scott Mitchell, one of the other ones, I believe he was the young one. He was the 16-year-old at the time. He was sentenced in 2014 and received life in prison. And then April 1st, 2015, Charles Wardlow, another person charged in Taylor's death, he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The final defendant, Timmy Lee Brown, was sentenced to 18 years in prison under a plea agreement. So I do give them credit. I mean, they effectively went after everybody involved and wanted to get justice for the family. But it's amazing to me that, you know, you're talking about 17-year-old kids, 16-year-old kids, 18-year-old kids. Like, I just was thinking about it. When I was 17 or 18 years old, would I ever have thought about robbing a home and shooting someone? That's what blows my mind the most.
But were there any conspiracies on this at all? Were there any conspiracies surrounding this case?
The only conspiracy was the man, Jason Mitchell, was the one who masterminded the burglary plan. He was older, and he found younger, vulnerable teenagers he could manipulate. So he put the plan together. He had them do recon, and he basically told them what to do. And, you know, the kids, once they realized Taylor was home and his family was home, they panicked.
Like, did they think it was a targeted, because there's been some things that it was a targeted hit. Like, they didn't take anything. I guess maybe they could have been scared.
They would have 100% burglarized them, but all his valuables were in the bedroom. So that's why, you know, they were trying to get in the bedroom to get the valuables. And
one of the things I read that there was a part of a gang initiation or revenge. They were the kids who were arrested there for Fort Myers, and they may have had gang ties.
Yeah.
Some of the people questioned whether the group was paid or influenced by somebody else, but there's no evidence of a contract killing. But
no, there was no evidence of like a hit.
Days in the trials, they were all
nothing.
57 years in prison.
Yep. That's what one of the suspects got. But it's crazy because a lot of these guys are going to get out. The trigger man that was the Eric Rivera Jr., he was the one who got the 57 and a half years in prison. So he's not getting out. But a couple of the other ones, you know, Timmy Lee Brown, he got an 18-year prison sentence, and that was in 2015, I believe. He was 16 at the time. I mean, it just blows my mind again, just the age of the kids that did this. And then, you know,
by the
Jason.
way, quickly, my theory on the short form.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the majority of our views come from Twitter. Right.
I know. I wish I had a Twitter account.
I know, but
the Twitter account does very well.
That's the interesting thing. Doing it in this form like this without having other YouTube, just plugging into one YouTube. The YouTube views, concurrent views, if you look at it, are equal to Twitter right now.
Oh, so how are you able to see? Because I've always wondered that. How can you see the different viewership on the platform?
You just scroll over to the little eye. See the eye up there?
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
So what that tells me is,
I didn't know that.
See, what I'm trying to figure out is, you know, what does YouTube want? It does not want you for some reason to stream
Oh,
to
it does. Holy
two
crap.
channels at once. Okay.
I see that.
It doesn't
They
want
they
now Twitter doesn't like this form as much. Twitter likes
the
the landscape better. So it does better.
yes.
Okay. But the truth is, as much as I love Twitter, I really care more what YouTube wants because that's how.
Well, because that's where the viewership and the monetization comes in the best.
But I think that's interesting. But anyway, continue. So
No, it just blows. It wasn't a hit. I just can't believe that. Obviously, this guy, this Jason Taylor, was able to recruit 4 minors or 5 minors to do this. The only one, Vinay Hunt was 20. The shooter, Eric Rivera Jr., was 17. Jason Scott Mitchell was 19. Charles Kendrick Lee Wardlow was 18. And and several of them confessed because they were kids and they were nervous. And they got plea deals. And then it was May 2008 where the 5th suspect, there were 5 people. Timothy Brown, he was charged with the first-degree murder, and he got, I believe, the 18 years. Jason Mitchell, the mastermind, was the only one actually given a true life sentence, even though Eric Rivera, the shooter, was sentenced to 57 and a half years in prison.
I wonder what made them.
And Charles Wardlow got 30 years.
I mean, were these just naive kids that went with this mastermind guy, and then
I think so, because he made it seem like, recently, especially NBA players, they were getting burglarized by a crew for the last 2 years. The FBI investigated. NFL and NBA players' houses were getting burglarized almost on a monthly basis, and they were getting away with it because I believe they would take sometimes security equipment, or they would have obviously masks and everything. But there was a big burglary ring that was successful for the last 2 years because obviously they knew the player's schedule, and they would burglarize players that some players that obviously were not as well known as others. There were some on NBA teams that weren't starters or weren't guys that you're seeing on commercials. Those are who they targeted, but all these people had valuables in their house, and they all had safes, and they all had cash. And that's the part where I kind of, it just blows my mind a little bit, because I know in my house, we don't have cash. Like, I don't know people who carry a ton of cash on them or keep a ton of cash on them at their house. And, I get their professional athletes, they can do what they want with their money. If they want to keep $100,000 in their house, they go ahead. And it's maybe, it's chump change to them. But, they have made out with hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then, I believe they were caught because they pawned some of the jewelry. And, once the FBI got involved and started, they went through pawn shops. They did cell tower checks, because a lot of these, the crew that was doing it was sophisticated. And it was a gang, the recent one. And they would use high-tech equipment that like scrambled cell tower signals or misdirected them so they could not be tracked. And it literally went on for 2 years. And I believe Patrick Mahomes was also a victim of a burglary. And a lot of the NFL players were hiring private security because of it, having people, stay at their house on away games, because it really was getting out of hand. But this was the first one. This was the first one that took place. And this guy was a career criminal, this Jason Mitchell, and he put together a crew of idiots from 16 to 20 years old, guys who were going nowhere in life, vulnerable, probably gang members. And
that was one of the conspiracy things that they were
getting. I'm sure they were. And he convinced them, oh, this will be easy. He's not going to be home. You'll be in and out. We'll split the take, and you're going to make all this money. He's going to have so many valuables, and you're going to come out with $1 million. I guarantee you he sold them a bill of goods that was probably not even close to true. And they go in through the window, and they were scared. They were scared. And he told them exactly where to go because they reconned the house. He said that valuables are going to be in the bedroom. So you have to make your way up to the bedroom. And it was dark, and Taylor heard the window, and he heard people climbing in, and a skirmish or noises coming from downstairs. And that's why, his wife actually left the bedroom, went and got the baby out of the crib, came back to the bedroom and hid. And Taylor had his machete, and he was by the bedroom door. They kicked in the bedroom door and they shot him. And then they left. So it's like, how stupid could you be to do that?
Yeah.
And you're shooting a high profile athlete. What do you think's going to happen? You're not shooting some dope dealer on the street. They're going to use every resource imaginable to catch you. And they did. He was shot on November 26th. November 30th, they were caught. That's how easy. Because, people talk, and once they got the guys into custody, they sang like birds. They confessed. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. No one was supposed to get shot. We panicked. Of course you're panicked. If I was a 16-year-old kid and I'm in a NFL player's house trying to rob him, you're going to make bad decisions. Someone opened fire. And it's so disgusting and tragic that this happened, because it's such a mindless, senseless incident of a guy who was on a burgeoning career, who was special. And, now his fiance is raising the daughter. The daughter doesn't have a father. The daughter will never remember the father. And it's just sickening, and it's sad, because it didn't have to happen. It did not have to happen. And this was the start of it. And as, the next 10 to 15 years went on, burglaries at athletes' house became much more sophisticated, and they became much more prominent. They were happening more and more. So it's just a really sad case. And Sean Taylor, I remember playing against him. I remember just what a dynamic, incredible athlete he was, and then hearing the type of person he was. He was inducted posthumously into the Redskins Ring of Fame in 2008. Many players honored Taylor by wearing his jersey numbers during his college and professional career. He wore 26 at Miami. He wore 36 his rookie year, and then he switched to 21 for the rest of his career. And there were several players that switched their numbers after his death. So, I mean, it just shows he did a lot for the community and charity in the area. He did charity work and community work in the area. And he just did his job well. He wasn't, like I said, overly outgoing. He just was quiet. He kept to himself. He did his job. Well respected by his teammates. Loved by his teammates. And he was, to this day, he is the first player that was voted to a Pro Bowl after his death. So he was posthumously voted to the Pro Bowl, becoming the first deceased NFL player in history to be elected to the Pro Bowl. So that just shows, you know, and he was having a very good season before. I mean, in 2007, he had played 9 games, and he was out with an injury. He had 5 interceptions in 9 games. That was the most that he had in his career, and he was still on his rookie contract. He was about to blow up. If you look at his stats, he got better and better and better. In 2006, the year before, he had 111 tackles. 111 tackles. And then, you know, this year, that year that he was shot, he was leading the team, and I think he was close to leading the league in interceptions with 5 in the 9 games that he played. And it just makes me sick reading about this. And, I mean, it took 5 idiots to do this. And, you know, again, in the absence of leadership, you'll listen to anyone. So they listened to this Jason Mitchell. He's like, oh, this will be easy. You'll be in and out. And we'll all be rich. And, yeah, great job. Took 5 of you to go after this one guy in his house with his wife and his fucking wife and 18-month-old daughter.
Yeah.
It's just horrible. So it's a legacy that'll live on. And, you know, I'd love to look up and see what they're doing to this day. His fiance and kid, how they are. But just senseless, man. It just shows how stupid our youth can be when they have too much time on their hands. You know, when they're not playing sports, when they're not doing anything productive.
Right.
Lack
of guidance.
And, you know, Julius had one of his kids on the show last night. His father played at Florida A&M. He's in the Florida A&M Hall of Fame. He played professionally. He's a actor and musician. And I could not have been more impressed by the way that he was raising his son. But he talked about the importance of activities. He said, I wouldn't care if my kid wanted to be a ballerina. As long as he was doing something, I would support it. And that is how you grow as a person. And he said, you know, he was part of the NFL choir, I guess, men's choir or something. I thought that he said it on the interview. He's a singer. He goes on tour and sings, and he does acting. But he he was talking about it. He said the kids that don't have, and even Julius said this. Julius was like, I came from not a great area in Atlanta. I saw gang life every day. His cousin was in a gang. Everyone he knew was in a gang. And what it taught him was, this is what I don't want to be.
Right.
Instead of the effect of, this is the life. This is what I want to do.
Well, that's the problem. There are people that want that.
Exactly.
Influenced and make a lot of
they're glorified. They get glorified because of it.
They get glorified. Yeah, that's the problem. That they get glorified.
And he said that he gave a speech at a charity event, and he talked about two of the most influential, closest people in his life. One of them just recently died. The other one is in jail for life. And he's like, I was lucky and went on to play at UConn and play in the NFL. And, my boy, he made some bad decisions. He's in prison for the rest of his life. And he's like, that hit me hard. So that hit me real hard. I need QB tips, Shamarko Thomas. You want a quarterback tip? Don't hold the ball too long. Get rid of it within 2.3 seconds. That's my tip for you. But yeah, no, he was talking about that. So I do agree that the value of kids playing sports and having something that gives you a purpose, a sense of accomplishment, you need that. You can't just come home after school at 3:00 and just sit there.
No.
I mean, you never let your kid do that. What's your kid going to do? You going to come home at 3:00 and play video games?
I know. Well, that's the thing. You have to fight against that. That's And that's
what the guy said about his son. He said that every season you have to pick an activity. You can do whatever you want, but you have to do something.
You can't do nothing.
You can't do nothing. And the kid is a sophomore. His film was unbelievable.
Really?
It was, yeah. He's a linebacker. It was probably the best linebacker film I've ever seen. Now, I don't know how to grade linebackers, but this kid was a guided missile. Now he is undersized, but I think he's like 6'1", 215. And Julius was talking about how they want edge guys, outside linebackers that can rush the passer, which he can, but they want you to be 6'3", 6'4". But this kid, I watched his film and I was just blown away. The way that he was able to, Julius has been working with him since the kid was 7 years old, because the dad didn't want him playing tackle football at a young age.
Right.
So he had him join the trench mob, and Julius really preaches mentorship, because he works with a lot of kids that don't necessarily have that.
Right.
And he told some stories about kids that have called him in the middle of the night with issues that they've gone and they've helped with. And he said, that's number one. I want anyone who's associated with us to be good people, to understand, to be respectful and polite and appreciative. And he makes a point of it. Anyone who's disrespectful to their parents or doesn't appreciate their parents, he cleans that up real fast. And that's part of the program is mentorship first, and then football. We want good people. because for you to play at the college level, you have to be a good person. We want you to be a good person so you can handle what's thrown at you. If you're not ready for that, you're going to flame out.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Yeah.
They definitely will flame out, especially now your character is continually tested.
Well, yeah, and he said the same thing about social media. He said social media is the death and so toxic for these kids. And, you know, he even talked about trainers. He said there's trainers that ghost kids if they're not elite, if they're not recruited by a P4 school, or if they don't have any offers. He told me that
Really?
he told me he's taken on several kids that trainers will work with,
Yeah.
do the bare minimum, and then dump them because they say, I can't have you because you're going to ruin my reputation. You know, I can only have kids that go to P4 schools. I can only have kids that, you know, are going to school on scholarship. So even though you're paying me $100 an hour every, twice a week, I'm not going to work with you anymore. And he just, that just sickened me to hear that a trainer would do that to a kid. And he's taking them on. And I commend him for doing that, because
I can't believe that. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I was blown away. He said it happens all the time there. He said, you know, because all these trainers, they look to put up on Instagram that, I coach so-and-so and he's going here, or he's in the NFL here. And that helps them to make more money. And that's what it ends up being all about, is the money. And they dump kids that they deem not worth their time, regardless of what they pay. And it's sickening how that happens. But that's why, you know, they have a good group. I wish I could show you this kid's film. I posted it on Spotify, but it was one of the best linebacker films I've ever seen.
Mm.
So do you guys have practice tonight?
Yes. Well, let's wrap this up and then we'll.
Okay. Well, yeah. Tragedy of Sean Taylor. 5 people all in jail, shot in a burglary attempt gone wrong. He wasn't supposed to be home. He was. Thankfully, his wife wasn't harmed, or fiance wasn't harmed, and daughter. But just a senseless act. And 5 idiot teenagers were coached by this criminal mastermind who was a moron. And it's just awful, senseless, and sickening. So for Bloodlines and Betrayal, I'm Steve Cully, the best podcast host in the universe. For Coach Schumann, he's exploring the world as we've seen with his AI. Remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges and throw them right back in life.